Welcome to Make Sylacauga Healthy Again. I'm your host, Dr. Jonathan Douglas of Broadway Spinal Care. This week, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, I guess they call him now, gave a speech, and I was reading through it and watching a little bit of it. And there's one thing that stuck out to me that I thought was very important in the realm of health. And you wonder why somebody for the Department of War speaking has anything to do with health. But he said something I think relates to just mental health in general. And he told the generals and the admirals there that they can no longer ignore things that are right in front of them that are obvious. So if they see something that they know is wrong, and they know that they can fix it, or at least should tell someone about it, then they can no longer pretend like that is something that's okay. And that had me thinking about public health. I just read an article talking about how public health is one of the things that has hurt our health the most, and we're going to talk about why, especially in the last 5 years with the COVIDs and all the things that have happened, that public health has become a one-size-fits-all based upon experts. And what we're finding out is that a lot of those experts are paid by companies and have interests that are different than the public's health. There are different countries in the world who did things differently during the COVID times. And when you're in the heat of something, sometimes you can make mistakes and you can say, well, that makes sense because we're really in the heat of it. But now that we're past this COVID time somewhat and we're 5 years down the line and we can do a retrospective, I think it's time for us to do what Pete Hegseth said we should do. Let's look at this and let's see if there's anything that we see that was wrong. And let's see what we can do in the future to make it right. Because if we're really going to work on public health, that one-size-fits-all is not really the right option. It's kind of like having a multi-tool. You can use it, but pretty much anything you try to do is going to be harder with a multi-tool than with exactly the right tool. So maybe in the future, if we really review this, we can apply the right tools if we ever have another emergency. Stay tuned. Shouldn't be hard for most of us to remember the beginnings of COVID. We were in Washington State and there was this announcement that there was some virus from China. My mom called me and said that there was going to be this big emergency coming up. And so of course we don't really watch the news very much. So everyone said, we got to watch this. And let's start with the subject of masking. So in the beginning, they had Dr. Fauci and all kinds of experts out and they said, we have looked at this extensively. Masks do not work. And there's a reason why they said that, because it has been looked at extensively all over the world for lots of different pandemics. And if you're going to work with a virus is very small. And the pore of a mask is very big unless you're wearing something super special. So we have a graphic to show that. So this is what they initially talked about. They said, here's the problem, guys. This virus is tiny, tiny, tiny. And those mask pores are really, really big. It's kind of like a mosquito and a chain link fence. You can't put a chain link fence up and stop a mosquito. It's never going to work. So that was the initial thinking. And I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense. We've got to find some other options for this virus. And so that is where we went for a short period of time. And then they said, well, maybe the masks do work for this virus, but you have to wear these really special N95 masks. That is the only thing that's really going to help us. And so, of course, then there's this run on N95 masks, and Costco has a few of them, but then they all disappear and, whatever else, because they said that is the only one, because of its pore size, that's going to do anything. And actually, when you look at the pore size, that doesn't make sense. But this is, again, in retrospective. So now we need N95. We can't get N95, but that is required, and you need to be wearing it. And so then they come out and say, you know what? It doesn't have to be an N95. It can be anything that you put on your face. And that is recommended, but we're not going to require it, but it makes a lot of sense. So now we've gone from N95 that has a pore that's really too big to even do much with the virus anyway and has to be fitted, and people are going for these special fittings and all these kind of things. And now they're saying, just put like an old Def Leppard t-shirt, cut that thing up, get your grandmother to sew it up and make you something that kind of fits. That's going to be better protection. Then the Oregon governor, because we were in the Oregon area, came out over a Thanksgiving, and she said there are two things. Number one thing is that everyone needs to be wearing these masks and limiting gatherings. And the number two thing is that you need to be telling the government, calling the police, if you see anybody going over that looks like they're having any kind of gathering during Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, and especially if they're not wearing masks. And these were the masks that they recommended. So let's take a look at that graphic. It almost looks like a Saturday Night Live skit when you look at this from behind. To those of us who were in the medical world, it looked like Saturday Night Live at that time. But that is the governor up there with her snow globe mask. And so I have never tested the pore size. I'm going to have to tell you, I do not know what pore size that thing has, but I can pretty much guarantee that that is not stopping any virus when it takes some huge level in a lab of masking to protect yourself. And then we've got one that's on Etsy or something. I mean, you got like a Hanukkah one, and then I've got one that's a snowman, and I don't even know what that other one is. Are we cutting into a ham or something? These were legitimately things, and you see that's from the Portland Garment Factory. These were legitimately things that were being passed off as being some kind of protection for this. Then the mandates really came, and this was during that mandate time. So it's not only do you have to wear a mask, you have to wear a mask even if it's that outside or inside. Now again, we started off with masks don't work. We've researched this to death, guys. Let's not go back to masks. Now we're at the sliced ham mask is the one that we have to wear, and you have to wear this thing even out in the neighborhood. We had someone in our neighborhood that ran around in one of those drywall masks with double canisters, and they did it out of fear, and they did it because that's what the public health officials were telling them, even though that was a complete reversal of what we had seen and what we knew based on research. If we had all looked at it and said something, then maybe that wouldn't have happened. In retrospective now, I think we can really look at this and say we were in the heat of the moment, maybe we were afraid, but wow, looking back, you think that sliced ham and that snowman, we really should have said, guys, this isn't making a lot of sense. And then you got officials like Newsom in California, they're going to dinner during all of this. You know, they've got these mask mandates, and then he's going to dinner with all his friends with no masking and says, oh, you know, it was okay for that, so it's okay for some people and it's not okay for others. And if we go back and look at Sweden, Sweden didn't do any of this masking. They didn't take kids out of school. They didn't do any of that kind of stuff. And they did better than everybody else. So somehow Sweden saw in the beginning, we need to stick with the old stuff versus what the rest of the Western countries, and basically the rest of the world did, and kind of losing their minds and moving into this, hey, ignore the research, doesn't make any sense in this scenario. Again, this goes back to critical thinking, which is one of the foundations of health. If you see something that doesn't make sense, maybe we should look into it a little bit more. And then you go into treatment. They said that you shouldn't look at any of the natural treatments that have ever helped viruses. There's only going to be these new things that are coming along. And we've got this vaccine. We've got all these treatments. They said initially this vaccine is going to stop the spread. If you get it, you can't give it to anyone else and you're not going to get sick. And then after a little bit, they said, you know what? Actually, you can still give it. So you still got to wear the mask. You still got to stay away from people. You can give it to others, but you're not going to get sick. And then they said, well, you can still give it, and you are going to get sick, but the sickness is going to be better. And now looking back, they can't even show statistically that that happened. And then they had all these new antiviral drugs that seemed to create this rebound effect. And we completely ignored all the other things that we would normally do, like vitamin D and sunshine and all those kind of things. So again, from a retrospective public health look at this, it was pretty much a complete failure that doesn't really make a lot of sense, because in the beginning it started off with some ideas that did make sense and then just morphed completely into something that's really hard to describe. Social distancing, nobody can figure out where in the world that came from. The best guess is maybe it was a science fair in Arizona that this child did a study and looked at that, and they figured out that if you're 6 feet apart, it might make sense, but you and I both know you were in a Walmart, you walked past someone within inches, and then you went and stood 6 feet apart, and then you came back within inches, and then you got 6 feet apart, and you came back within inches, and you're wearing your Def Leppard mask, and we got another graphic. We got people in the band. Guys, look at that. Does anybody see anything that's wrong with that? We've got a pore size on this mask that's way too big anyway to stop. Even if that thing was super tight, the pore size is too big to stop a virus. Around the sides is not tight. And then what have we done? We have cut a hole so that he can breathe and blow right through the middle. And that was a mandated thing for several years. Literally mandated. And to top it all off, the place we are now in California is they literally just banned the wearing of masks by people who are in law enforcement for any reason, because they say it might be dangerous, when people cried for that forever because people were wearing masks and were robbing stores during the COVID times, and they said, hey, we need to stop this masking because it's creating all these other issues. California literally arrested paddleboarders for being in the ocean during some of these times, and now they're saying it's illegal to wear a mask. It's really hard to understand, but the thing that you can understand is that looking back, let's all hopefully critically think about this and say, you know what, in the future, we're going to look at things as they happen a little bit harder versus just acting out of fear, because when you act out of fear, then you usually don't make the right decisions. We certainly do a lot of talking like lions and then sacrificing like lambs. So maybe in the future we can act a little more like lions and stand up for ourselves and say, you know what, if it doesn't make sense and you change the whole idea all the time, and you got these experts that have maybe some payments in the background that we need to know about, maybe let's all think about it a little bit more, and let's not put a child in a mask and cut a hole so that they can play a clarinet. We all know that makes no sense. We'll see you next time.